Tripper, Bart said, his expression unchanged. This cake, it has a certain structural integrity. It reminds me of a well-negotiated mortgage. He turned to Ralph. You're an idiot, Ralph. But you have good taste in tenants. Carry on. And I want a slice of this cake sent to my office every Friday. As the door closed behind the brothers, the trio collapsed onto the sofa. I think I like the grey flannel Furley better, Jack gasped. At least he pays in compliments instead of truth taxes. Chapter 35. A bun in the oven. Literally. The news hit apartment 304 on a rainy Thursday morning, tucked between a burnt batch of croissants and Chrissy's attempt to waterproof the living room rug. Janet had been feeling vaguely floral, her term for a nausea that didn't involve bad seafood. Jack, Janet whispered as they stood in the kitchen, the scent of morning coffee suddenly unbearable to her. I think the company is about to expand its headquarters. Jack froze, a spatula halfway to a pan of eggs. Expansion? Like a new flower shop boutique? Or a mobile catering unit? Like a Tripper. A tiny, loud, hungry Tripper. The realization hit Jack like a falling copper pot. He didn't faint, but he did accidentally flip an omelette onto the ceiling. A baby? Janet, that's a 4-person company. That's a crowd. A beautiful, wonderful, terrifying crowd. Chrissy bounced into the room, misinterpreting the omelette on the ceiling as a new form of avant-garde decor. Ooh, are we having a ceiling party? Is there a special occasion? Chrissy. Janet laughed, tears of joy and morning sickness in her eyes. You're going to be an aunt. An honorary, blonde, very confusing aunt. Chrissy's scream of delight was high enough to shatter a luau lulu lamp. A baby. We have to get a stroller. And a crib. And a tiny, tiny Romanian folk costume. Chapter 36. The Great Crib Farce. Naturally, no life event in Adobe Lane could occur without a monumental misunderstanding involving Ralph Furley. The trouble began when Jack and Larry Dallas were seen hauling a large, suspicious wooden crate up the stairs. Ralph, who had been practicing vibration sensing in the hallway, immediately assumed the worst. Tripper! Dallas! Ralph barked, appearing from the shadows in a velvet robe that looked like a melted disco ball. What is in that crate? My brother Bart has strict rules about unauthorized livestock. If that's a goat for another one of your Alps dinners, I'm calling the health department. It's not a goat, Ralph, Larry shouted, wiping sweat from his brow. It's a high-performance aerodynamic sleeping vessel. It's got independent suspension and a built-in snack tray. Ralph's eyes narrowed. A sleeping vessel? For whom? Tripper. Are you trying to sublet the hallway to a midget sailor? It's a crib, Mr. Furley, Jack gasped, losing his grip on the wood. Janet's pregnant. Ralph's jaw dropped so far it nearly hit his platform shoes. Pregnant? In my building? I haven't prepared the vibrations for a diaper change. I need to buy safety padding for the lobby. I need to install a silent elevator. I need to buy a world's best honorary landlord mug. By the time the crate was opened, Ralph had already called a building meeting to discuss infant-related decibel regulations, only to find that Larry had actually delivered a slightly used cage from a failed petting zoo instead of a crib. It was a bargain, Jack, Larry insisted as they stared at the iron bars. Just throw some lace on it, and it's basically a nursery. Chapter 37. The Legacy of Adobe Lane. The final months of the pregnancy were a whirlwind of domestic chaos. The apartment was overflowing with hand-knitted booties from Chrissy, most of which were accidentally sized for a small elephant, and fatherhood advice from Ralph Furley, which mostly involved how to teach a toddler the importance of a properly tied ascot. On the night the newest Tripper was born, a healthy girl named Chloe, the entire building seemed to hold its breath. Even the ocean breeze felt quieter. When Jack and Janet finally brought Chloe home to apartment 304, the door was already open. The living room was filled with flowers from Janet's shop, a professional-grade bassinet from Bart Furley. The grey flannel heart had truly melted, and a giant, inflatable used car mascot from Larry Dallas. Chrissy was sitting on the sofa, holding a tiny, hand-painted sign that said, Agent Chloe Tripper, reporting for diaper duty. She's beautiful, Jack, Chrissy whispered, reaching out a finger for the baby to grab. She's the new manager. Jack smiled, looking at his wife and his two best friends. The company is officially full. They sat together on the balcony, the chef, the florist, the dreamer, and the legacy. The Pacific was a deep, velvet blue, and the stars were bright. The glass sculpture had not only survived, it had become a lighthouse. Epilogue, the final midnight. Downstairs, Ralph Furley sat in his neon purple armchair. He was looking at a photograph of the wedding, specifically the moment where he had pronounced them husband and wife. He straightened his sunset orange tie and sighed with a deep, soulful satisfaction. Tripper and Wood, Furley mused, closing his eyes. A chef and a florist. The vibrations in this building, they finally feel right. Solid. Synchronized. He reached over and turned off his Luau Lulu lamp, the one that had started it all. Good vibrations. Forever. And upstairs, in the apartment at 201 Adobe Lane, the light on the balcony remained on. 3 people, no. 4 people sat together, watching the fog roll out to sea and the stars emerge, knowing that no matter what misunderstanding tomorrow brought, they would face it together. Because in the end, 3 wasn't just a crowd. It was the only company they ever needed. The end. A midnight rendezvous in Santa Monica, based on the chronicles of Apartment 201. Chapter 1. The Ghost of Landlord's Past. The Santa Monica sun was a relentless gold coin hanging over the Pacific, casting long, amber shadows across the salt-crusted balcony of Apartment 201. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lemon wax and the bittersweet tang of transition. The Ropers were gone. After years of Stanley's grumbling and Helen's colorful caftans, the downstairs apartment stood empty, a hollow shell of floral wallpaper and memories of unfixed plumbing. Janet Wood stood in the center of the living room, her hands on her hips, surveyed the chaos. She was the anchor of their strange little ship, a sensible florist with a heart that beat in rhythm with the seasons. Beside her, Chrissy Snow was currently engaged in a battle with a single high-heeled shoe. If I were a shoe, where would I be? Chrissy, we have a garage sale to run, Janet reminded her, though her voice lacked any real bite. The Ropers left a mountain of junk in that garage, and if we don't sell it, we're going to be short on the rent. Again. I found it, Chrissy squealed, pulling a platform heel from under the sofa. Janet, your system worked. I asked where I'd be if I were a shoe, and I looked down, and there I was. Janet sighed, a small smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Technically, the shoe was there. Chrissy, you were just above it. Their conversation was interrupted by the sliding glass door crashing open. Jack Tripper stumbled in, smelling of yeast and ambition. He was carrying a tray of what looked like golden, puffed clouds. Jack was a whirlwind of slapstick grace, a man who could trip over a flat rug, but flip a crepe with the precision of a surgeon. Behold, Jack announced, narrowly avoiding a collision with the coffee table, the Bavarian cream pie that will bring world peace, or at least keep us from being evicted by whoever the new landlord is. Jack, the new landlord is already here, Janet said, her expression turning serious. Larry saw him at the Regal Beagle. His name is Ralph Furley. Jack paused, a dollop of cream hitting his thumb. Furley? Sounds like a breed of terrier. Is he nice? Does he like chefs who occasionally have female roommates in a strictly platonic, totally not violating the lease sort of way? Larry says he wears leisure suits that can be seen from space, Janet replied, and he's coming over tonight. The stakes were higher than a simple change in management. For 3 years, they had lived in a delicate balance, 2 girls and a guy, a scandal in the eyes of the suburban 1970s. Stanley Roper had only allowed it because he believed Jack was one of the girls. It was a lie they lived every day, a comedic masquerade that was starting to feel more like a lifestyle. Chapter 2. The Peacock of Santa Monica. The doorbell didn't just ring. It seemed to announce an arrival of galactic importance. When Janet opened it, she was met with a vision in polyester. Ralph Furley stood there in a suit the color of a bruised plum, accented by a shirt with a collar so wide it could have served as a hang glider. He wore a medallion that clinked against his chest, and a look of practiced bachelor sophistication. "Come and knock on our door," Jack whispered from the kitchen, echoing the song that seemed to play in his head whenever life got weird. "Name's Ralph Furley," the man announced, stepping into the apartment without an invitation. Landlord, resident manager, and bachelor at large. "I run a tight ship, ladies. No leaks, no squeaks, and absolutely no hanky-panky."